Session 3. Living as models to others. The second half of the 20th century transformed our understanding of neighbourhood. In 1950, people often lived, worked, shopped, worshipped within easy walking distance of their home. As more households were able to own cars, so people were able to travel further for work and for other purposes. This means that as recently as the 1950s and 1960s, work colleagues were immediate neighbours. They saw how you lived, not just in the workplace. Now, work colleagues can live so far away that you never see them outside of work. And this has a direct impact on many other aspects of life, including church attendance. A church fellowship may be spread over a far greater geographical area now than it was in our parents' or grandparents' day. A term that is sometimes used when talking of our Christian mission is the word incarnational. It comes from the description of the birth of Jesus. The Word became flesh. God became meat and blood. So we are the current incarnation of God's presence within our communities or neighbourhoods, our working community, our social community, and our worshipping community. This is an issue for churches where ministers have to serve half a dozen churches miles and miles apart. To what extent can he or she be a part of that community or neighbourhood? So how can we love our neighbours unless we connect with others in some kind of neighbourhood? Now, these were not issues facing the New Testament church. People lived close to where they worked, and they lived cheek by jowl with their neighbours. Even if those becoming new disciples went to meet with the church, they would meet their neighbours. Even if those neighbourhood churches met some miles apart from each other, there was never any sense of not belonging to the one church. No matter how far apart they were geographically, they saw themselves as part of the same church spiritually. Whether they met in one place or several, Paul and his team would have lived among them as practical handbooks of Christian living. The witness of the early church was enhanced by the way the Christians lived among their neighbours on a daily basis. Not only were they a consistent witness to non-Christians, but they were a constant example to those who were starting to follow Christ. In the days before the New Testament was published, they were living love letters from God to those communities. Discipleship was a matter of imitating your examples, and that's why Paul was very careful to say, imitate us as we imitate Christ. Christ is our primary example, and that is why we need to familiarize ourselves with him and his life and teachings, which we now find in the Gospels. But we sometimes need secondary examples in flesh and blood. People whom we know that follow Christ, so that we can learn from them. The church is not an accident. It is part of God's plan for making and shaping disciples. The church was deliberately founded by Jesus, so that we could have flesh and blood examples to follow, and so that we in turn can become templates on which people can model their own attitudes and behaviour. The big question for us is how. Do we need to make any changes to the way we operate as a church so that emerging disciples can model themselves on those who are more mature in the faith? Does this methodology require a different pattern to the one that we currently use?